Welcome back to another episode of Dad Bod Fantasy Squad. I am here with Robbie Bobby. What's up, dude?
Dude, we are here to tell the listeners what we have coming up. We are here to bring you the best fantasy football personalities from around the NFL to break down each squad for you, the viewers. We want you to win your league, and these are the guests that are going to bring you the insight that no one else will.
So stay tuned. We have 8 of these coming out for you guys, and enjoy.
All right, next up, we have a guy that was one of the first in the industry to welcome me years ago, and one of the nicest guys around. He's a fantasy sports writer over at the Undroppables with his signature Moneymakers and Heartbreakers series. He also co-hosts the Cheat Sheet podcast, and you can find him over on Twitter at Mike Reedy FF. That's Mike REEDYFF, where he's super active, loves to interact with people about all things life and fantasy football. It's time to welcome a great friend of ours, Mike Reedy, to the show. How are you doing today, Mike?
Good, Rob. Good to be here with you and Mario. I was super excited when you asked me to join this, man. We go all the way back. What is it? 4 years now that both of us have been involved in the industry.
I was gonna say, yeah.
I
think 4 or 5 years around, something like that. Yeah, it's been long. It's been fun.
Yeah. You are also one of the people who welcomed me. I mean, that was my first season really being involved as well. So it's great to be here with you, man. We were always lock and step on players. People didn't think that about us, by the way. They thought we were ganging up on them.
Exactly. It was nice to have someone supporting.
You know what, Mike? I have two Robs that I deal with on a regular basis, and I feel like they gang up on me all the time. So Mike, I think Rob has found another Reedy in the sense, and them two gang up on me all the time with their player tags.
Just means that guy must be smart. That's all.
I agree.
Yeah, that guess what that means for me, boys? It means I'm a bozo. So today we're going to be talking. We're going to get your take on a lot of the Cowboys and kind of figure out what the fantasy relevant kind of players and what's going on with them this season. I will be, and maybe this is right where we disagree, or I'm a little bit lower on almost all of the Cowboys. I know Norton and Rob, this is one of the guys, like specific example, CD Lamb. We got in a huge conversation about CD Lamb. It's funny. This is one of the best examples for that, right? But let's talk departures here. So Ezekiel Elliott, Dalton Schultz are both gone from this offense. They did add a few guys, though. We got Brandon Cooks. They got Gilmore on defense. They got Luke Schoonmaker, the rookie. They added Ronald Jones in free agency. I don't know if he makes the team, but he's depth at the RB position. So what's your expectations this season for the Cowboys?
There's another big change there you didn't mention. I'm surprised, right? They lost Kellen Moore, and I think that hurts them a little bit. And they added Brian Schottenheimer, which helps some. I know McCarthy says he's going to do the play calling. One of the big things to remember about Schottenheimer, though, is that his last 2 seasons when he was with Seattle were the last 2 times we saw Russell Wilson have 4,000-yard seasons. And they had 2 wide receivers have 1,000-yard seasons, and that was Lockett and DK Metcalf. So I'm not totally down on Dallas, but Mario, I agree with you a little bit, right? Like, I'm not as high on CeeDee Lamb as everybody else is. I love Brandon Cooks, by the way. He's a player I love. He seems to get 1,000 yards just showing up. Last year, he probably would have had 1,000 yards, but he decided to not show up anymore.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So I think they're going to spread the ball around a little bit more. You're going to see them hit wide receivers on the move. So you're not going to see the same type of offense. And that should be good for the passing game. But as I have in my notes, the player I like the most out of this is Dak Prescott, because I think it helps him, doesn't hurt him. But yeah, CeeDee Lamb is a guy, he could finish people like top 3, top 5. He could also finish only in the top 15, right? So I'm not as high as everybody else. I like him, but I'm never drafting him because he's gone
Goes too high.
I would ever take him. Yeah.
No, it definitely makes sense, and you kind of hit on it with Dak too. You're high on Dak. Where do you have him ranked this year?
Dak, I have him ranked 8th. I think he can finish higher than that. It depends on how this works out, right? I don't think their schedule is overly friendly as well. What he was where did he finish last year? Right.
In points per game, I think it's somewhere near where you're saying. And
Right.
overall, because he missed some time, it's a little less.
Yeah, a little less. But I have him as finishing top 10 easily. I think that's where you're going to see him. I've been a big Dak guy overall through the years. I think I've been higher on him than everybody else is. I don't understand why some people are down on him in fantasy. He seems to always produce like top 12 guy as long as he's healthy. So I'm pretty high on Dak because of that, and because of the change I think we're going to see the offense. I think it helps him the most. Seeing guys like Ferguson being someone that everybody's talking about in camp, he's
Yeah.
a lot of balls. Pollard can catch the ball out of the backfield. I just think all of this bodes well for Dak more than everybody else around him. Every time you talk about a lot of players involved in a passing tree, and that's what I'm hearing coming out of camp for Dallas. Everybody's like, "Oh, you want a piece of that?" No, I do not want the number 4 guy in Dallas.
Yeah.
No, I don't. But I do want the quarterback more if
Yeah.
he has all these weapons that look like they're going to be good this year. So I'm pretty high on Dak. And when I said I would do this, I literally just drafted Dak in Paulie's playoff.
There you go.
Like maybe 15 minutes before you asked me if I would do this, and I was like, "Excellent, that jives well
That's
with
perfect.
what I'm getting asked to
What-
do."
What league are you in?
Paulie's playoffs run by Shane Barrett.
Yeah, the Liga, because both of us are in there with you. I was just
Mhm.
wondering what number. Like, I think it has a number assigned to it.
Yeah, you're gonna make me look.
I was wondering if we're in the same league because if you just got Dak,
I'm in 8.
okay, I'm 9.
I'm in 10.
Well, there you go. We've got the top 10 covered, right?
Exactly. No,
I thought we
yeah.
were in the same one for a second. Sorry.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, I took Dak in the second round, and I literally took him like 10 minutes before this. And my reasoning is what I talked about, right? Like, we know CeeDee Lamb's good. We know Brandon Cooks is good. We know Tony Pollard's really good, by the way. And it looks like Ferguson's gonna emerge here as at least a usable tight end. I mean, I don't get crazy over one preseason game, but the fact that he's getting a target share already is good. So I like that. All of that I like for Dak. It makes me like Dak more.
Yeah, I was gonna say too. So with Dak, then I mean, it sounds like you have him. He's kind of lumped in with like a huge group of guys between Tua, Richardson, Cousins, Rodgers, like all those guys. So it sounds like you have him at the top of that tier, then, huh?
I have him in that tier. I don't. When I rank players, I actually hate ranking players because I like to group them strictly by tier, and I have them in that tier. So for me, like, I'm happy if I get somebody out of that tier, especially like in a super flex, like Paulie's playoff. I got Dak and I got Cousins, and it's because of where I was drafting, and I went Jefferson with my first pick. So like I was super excited to get 2 guys out of that group. I would have been happy by the way to get Tua or Richardson. And if I had to settle, I think at the end of that, I would lump Goff in there as well this year, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I like that tier. And one of the things I like about Dak in that tier was I know they changed their offensive coordinator, but they passed the 11th most in the NFL last season, 51% of the time. I think you're going to see that again. They're going to be a more high volume passing team than running team. So I just think it bodes really well for Dak.
Definitely.
Yeah, and we talked about CeeDee Lamb. Obviously, he emerged as a star last season. We talked kind of what your expectations are on him, but where do you have him ranked as well as wide receiver?
So I have him as 8 actually, and he finished as 6 last year, right? In standard half point per reception Yahoo leagues. That's where I went and looked to where his finish was. So as I said, if he's available, I'll take him, but I think people are drafting him as if he's a top 5 guy right now.
Yeah.
And it's there's some guys I'm going to draft before him that I'm not sure other people want. Like, I play a lot of PPR. I want Amon-Ra St. Brown over CeeDee Lamb, and some of it is right just volume. I'm a volume guy.
Yeah.
So that's somebody I think where I definitely don't meet consensus. I have him over CD. I would gladly draft him as a top 10 wide receiver, but what we mentioned, right? Like, Mario, you said you're not as high on him. Where do you have him?
I have him wide receiver 10, and I'm getting and they did convince me to move him up, I think, 2 spots. It's tough. This is a guy that this was the first time he's cracked the top 10, if I'm not mistaken, was last season. And now, I'm going to transition us here. Now we add a guy like Brandon Cooks, Michael Gallup, a year removed from that ACL injury, or 2 years removed. I mean, I don't want to say the tight end option has really changed, but you do look at Tony Pollard gaining more of a snap share count where he could absolutely be used as a weapon. So all of those things scare me just the same as it does you. And I noticed that you said you wouldn't draft the wide receiver 4 on this team, but when we talk about Brandon Cooks, presumably the wide receiver 2, is that a guy that you like at his ADP?
God, I love him at his ADP, right?
Wide receiver 42, I think.
Turns out 1,000-yard seasons, you can't, if CD's as good as everybody thinks he is, and he's really good, right? He's really talented. He's going to command a lot of attention, which means Brandon Cooks is going to be open for probably another 1,000-yard season. And at that ADP, he's 29 years old. Like, it's not like he's 35.
Right.
I like him there. I think he's going to get a lot of opportunity. Gallup, I view as a boom bust guy. I draft him in best ball, but I'm not really looking at him in redraft all that much. I think he's going to continue to be kind of a boom bust player. I know a lot of people love those guys. Imagine if he could score 4 touchdowns every game. Yeah, that's not going to happen, right?
Yeah.
He's Mike Williams. He's a guy like that, right? Where people love it when we see the big, huge game, but you're not going to see that every week from anyone ever. So it's just how it is, unless it was Randy Moss, back with the Patriots.
That's true. That is true. But yeah, so yeah, I was gonna say you kind of hit on obviously the tight ends and everything like that too. Transitioning to the backfield with Tony Pollard, it looks like this could be the time now with Zeke out of there. Obviously, there's always risk they may bring in someone else, right? But he's long been a guy that fantasy managers have been really wanting to see in a feature role. You think this is the year, his career year?
Yeah, I mean, I have him listed at running back 11. He's easily can be a top 10 guy. He's really good. He was excellent last season, and that was splitting time with Zeke, right? So he had 1,200 yards and 12 TDs. That's pretty good, right? I expect him to do better than that without Zeke there. And I like him in the passing game. So I think he should have a really good year. Some of my rankings like him as running back 11 is because I can't justify putting him higher than some other guys in the draft. But the infamous, the range of outcomes. The range of outcomes is he's probably going to finish the season as a top 10 guy. I like Pollard a lot. He's somebody have a lot of shares of already in redraft.
So I was going to say, so it sounds like you're definitely okay using a 2nd round pick because he's going regularly 2nd round. He was going 3rd round early in best ball season. So, I mean, that was incredible value. But he's creeped up kind of middle 2nd round. And so it sounds like you're okay using the pick there.
I would say probably helped him creep up to that because that's typically where I've been taking him when I draft him is like middle of the 2nd round.
Yep.
It's hard to rank him higher than that for me. I mean, but with things that are happening right now, like with Jacobs Taylor, Zeke signing with New England, Stevenson, Cook signing with the Jets, and Breece Hall, like I could probably move him up to like a running back 7 in my rankings now and feel comfortable as well and move some of these guys down. I was really high on a couple of these other guys. Like I think Taylor's still my number 3 running back. But if he doesn't sign, obviously if he doesn't show up, right, obviously that changes everything.
It does seem like in your heart you have Tony Pollard ranked much higher, but you're like, I have to have these guys. But because if you take them in 2nd round, that's probably RB 6 or 7 or something, right? Usually in 2nd.
I reach for him and Stevenson. I've been reaching a lot.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh no, that is Zeke. It doesn't. I don't think it hurts that, but that
I don't
Zeke.
think it hurts Stevenson all that much either.
Yeah.
I'm not worried about it. And again,
I don't either.
they're both heavily involved in the passing game.
Helps health wise.
Yeah, and I
Mhm.
I think both guys are probably going to have top 10 seasons this year. Yeah.
I agree.
That is awesome. Is there anybody else that you on this team that we should be keeping an eye out for? Is there anybody that we haven't mentioned?
Well, we talked about Ferguson, and I think if you're punting TE, which I do often, by the way, if I can't get Kelsey, I kind of just punt it. I don't even look at some of the guys in the middle there. I mean, he could be a huge value pick. His ADP is 218 right now,
Yeah,
right?
nice.
So free, and if he
Yeah.
doesn't pan out, you just drop him to the waiver wire. Who cares? It's you're
Mhm.
not losing anything.
Exactly.
I like guys like that. I mean, he has some serious upside if he produces, because Schultz is somebody that like lots of people loved. Schultz was pretty consistent. The offense has changed a little, but the quarterback's still the same guy. So
And I often say, and I like Dalton Schultz, I really do, but his athleticism was very normal, right? Like it was very middle of the road, where it was a product of that offense. Where I think Jake Ferguson actually he's a little bit more athletic, and if he can give the same role, it could be great. It could be a good season for you.
the question to ask people is, are you still high on Dalton Schultz now that he's in Houston? Some people are, but
Yeah.
most people is like, no, don't even care.
Nah.
All right, so you have your answer, right?
Yeah.
The one question that we have been asking everybody, I wish I was phrasing this the way that Robbie does, because he phrases it the exact same way he has ever
know.
asked it. The one question we've been asking everybody is, who is your flag plant player this season, or your my guy player for the year?
All right, I created a list, right?
I like it.
Perfect.
So some of them are now like everybody's guy, but originally Amon-Ra St. Brown was one of my guys. I'm usually early on some of these guys, and then the rest of my home leagues read everything I write and watch everything I talk about, so you never get to get that guy ever again.
Yep.
Ramondre Stevenson, I'm from Boston, so most of the guys I play with, like the odds of me getting him are slim, other than in industry
it's
league.
home leagues. Yeah.
Where I have them in every industry league, by the way. Because
Yeah.
like I said, I'm very high on Lions running backs. Monty and Gibbs, I like them both a lot this year. If we learned anything from last season, even though it's two completely different running backs this season, is that the Lions running backs will probably produce. Everybody's really high on Gibbs, which makes Monty much more available for you. Super high on Rashad White in Tampa Bay, like very high on him. There's no competition. He's not overly expensive, but everybody's talking about him now, which kind of bums me out, because that means you're not going to get him where you were getting him a month ago.
Yeah.
Pat Freiermuth, tight end that saw 90 targets last year. With Deontay dinged up a little in the preseason, I think we're looking at 90 to another 100 targets for him, right? That's pretty late round value at tight end, huge volume. Juju Smith-Schuster is the new slot receiver for the Patriots. People talking like he sucks, and they suck. And I hate to tell you this, but the slot receiver saw 120 some odd targets last year for the Patriots. So again, if you're looking at volume and a big, strong guy like Juju, as long as he's on the field, there's going to be volume. And then the last season's TE5, who I drafted super early in Scott Fishbowl, just to make people go nuts in my Scott Fishbowl live draft, Taysom Hill. They're talking about using him more as a receiver. I know people hate that he's a tight end. He's really a fullback. I don't care. If he gets me 12 touchdowns, I don't care what he is. If I can plug him in at tight end, I don't care.
Exactly.
So those are guys. I have a couple of early round guys there and a couple of mid round guys. But like Juju's practically free for the volume he's going to see. People, it's like you don't understand what the Patriots do and what Bill O'Brien does. Coaching matters a lot, and if he's playing in that like Julian Edelman type role, the volume is going to be immense, and
Yeah.
that's where he's going to play.
Yeah.
Definitely makes sense. It's a lot of good names there. I like the array that you hit there with giving the viewers a bunch of different guys. But yeah, Mike, this was awesome. We just want to say again, that we can't thank you enough for joining us. Talk some Cowboys, talk some fantasy football with us. It's truly been a pleasure. Before we let you go, let the viewers know where they can find you, all your content. You have anything coming soon that you'd like to promote?
No, I mean, you hit moneymakers and heartbreakers is the thing I'm probably most well known for. People who don't even know me actually know it, which shocks me sometimes, right? Untangling the Wires, my waiver wire article. I keep pushing that hard because I feel it's the best waiver wire article out there. And yes, I've written stuff by you. I've read stuff by you guys. Sorry, I think mine's good. The cheat sheet is my podcast with my friend Larry Burns. He's the guy who actually taught me how to play fantasy. Because I used to make fun of people like us, by the way, including him. And now I do this, right? But yeah, that's where you can find me. If you hit me up on Twitter with any kind of questions about stuff, I'm pretty good at answering. I like to interact there. It's a good time.
Thank you so much, Mike.
Thanks for having me, guys.
All right, next up, we have another great guest for you guys. He's a New York native and a big-time New York sports fan. He's also a freelance writer that has his own Mint Sports blog, and you can find on his link over on his Twitter, which is @MintSports, where he's very active. It's time to welcome Eric Mintzer to the show. How are you doing tonight, man?
I'm doing great. Thank you guys for having me. Are we still calling it Twitter? Is it called X now?
I've been especially when writing these intros, dude, I don't know what to do. I don't know if I say Twitter X or say Twitter calling it X or I don't even know what to do at this point anymore.
I don't know. It sounds weird to say I'm Xing out a link tonight. I got to tweet out a link,
I know.
Dude, and sending tweets anymore, it's x.com, and every time I'm like, somebody's gonna see this and they're gonna be like, what is this guy sending me?
Yeah.
Someone's gonna look sideways, yeah.
That's what I thought too, and I kept telling my wife, I'm like, I wonder what it's gonna be called, and I saw they were calling them posts and quotes instead of quote tweets. They're calling them quotes, and they're calling them posts. And I'm like, I guess eventually we're all gonna transition to it, I guess, but it just feels weird. It feels weird right now to me.
Sure does.
We're in an adjustment period for sure.
Exactly, man. Exactly. But yeah, tonight we got you on talking some Giants, some fantasy football. So starting with some departures here, we had Richie James, Kenny Galladay, John Feliciano. They had some additions, brought in some weapons for Daniel Jones. They had Darren Waller, Paris Campbell, and then they drafted Jalen Hyatt. So what are your expectations this season for the Giants as a team?
Honestly, I'm a Jets fan, as you know, but I love this Giants team. I think last year they played so inspired under Brian Dable. They played such a great brand of football that I think they honestly made the right improvements where they lost John Feliciano, their center, but they drafted a center. And I'm blanking on his name. I know it's John Mitchell Schwartz, I believe, or around there. And they stepped up their offensive line. They went out and they got Darren Waller. They needed a playmaker, and he's a guy who, I mean, let's be honest, Kenny Galladay did absolutely nothing. So if Darren Waller can stay healthy, he can step in and be a guy who can help that offense with the playmaking that Kenny Galladay never gave them. You mentioned Jalen Hyatt, the draft pick out of Tennessee. I get it. If you watch college football, which I know you both do, I do as well, the Tennessee offense was just such a fun offense to watch. And Jalen Hyatt was definitely a byproduct of the nature of just the free-flowing offense. But I think he gives the Giants a deep ball threat that they haven't had in a long time. So I think their offense has stepped up and their defense looks great. I think the Giants can definitely repeat it 10-7, maybe 9-8 this year, but they're in a good spot.
Yeah, dude, the offense was really fun to watch. You should hear me. We just finished an episode of me talking about how I'm nervous about Danny Dimes. But it's hard to every time I take that stance, it's hard to, because their coach alone kind of just brings this winning culture that it's like, I don't know if I want to go against that. It's so much easier to go against coaches that you're like, yeah, I don't care for that coach. I think they should be gone. But like Brian Daboll is so good. John Michael Schmitz is the center name that you were referencing. I had to look it up myself.
Okay.
But talking about Daniel Jones, he made a huge leap last year, not only in fantasy, but in his throwing. I know he didn't do great with touchdowns, and I don't think his yardage was crazy, but he looked better. He looked better throwing the ball. They were much more first, second read offense. Do you think he could go further with this? Do you think he could make another leap this season?
I think it's possible, and I think a lot of it has to do, though, unfortunately, with the health of the players around him. We know Saquon last year was phenomenal. He played 16 games almost the entire season, and he was phenomenal. If he can repeat that, if you can get a full season out of Darren Waller, if you can get, just a healthy offensive line for a full season, that Daniel Jones, by all means, could make that next step. I mean, we saw Brian Daboll was the coach for Josh Allen, but he took his game to the next level, and then even beyond that. So it's possible for Danny Dimes. Personally, I think he's got to prove it a little bit more at the passing game. Like you said, he picked up a lot on the ground. He went over 700 yards rushing, 7 touchdowns. And that's where, he proved himself to win football games by not turning the ball over and running the football. For him to make that next leap, I need to see it in the passing game.
I think that's my hesitation as well, as that passing game. But I mean, you bring up a lot of parts that could help that. We got a wide receiver, Paris Campbell, who we haven't really seen. I think last year was closest to his full season as he's had since coming into the league. You got guys like Sterling Shepard and Wan'Dale Robinson, who, I mean, Sterling Shepard hasn't had a full season, and I don't know how many seasons, but he's great when he's out there. Wan'Dale, unfortunately, tore his ACL first season. You got guys like Darius Slayton, who actually is probably the beacon of health when it comes to this wide receiver room. If those guys stay healthy, or just in general, I guess, where are you currently ranking Daniel Jones? Or are you okay taking him at his current ADP, which I think is QB 14 off the board?
I'm seeing him pretty much anywhere between like 12 to 14 to 15. So I'm fine with that. I think last year you saw, because of the rushing potential, he was a top 10. Like, he was a guy, he had the weeks in top 10. He finished, I think, Fantasy Pros says QB 9. So if you had him, he's a guy that you probably took really late, and he helped your team a lot. I think this year he's a guy, again, you can get really late, and the potential's there. You saw it, 7 rush touchdowns last year.
Yeah, I think that's great points. That rushing floor is just so nice. And if he keeps that rushing floor, like, it's going to be hard, I mean, for him to really do worse than that QB 14 finish. And that's what I love. I mean, these guys know I'm all in on the rushing guys a lot when it comes to fantasy. So I like what you're saying there. When we're moving over to the receiving options, this group last year was arguably one of the worst kind of collective groups of pass catchers and weapons in the NFL last season. And as we mentioned before, though, they did go out and add some weapons for him, with Darren Waller being the key guy there. Are you expecting a bounce back season for Waller this year?
I don't know, man. I mean, Waller's the real question mark. At least he's had 20 games played over the last 2 seasons. So he's not staying on the field a lot. But the 2 years before that, he was 1,100 yards for 2 years in a row, top 5 tight ends. So I really want to say yes, because he'll be healthy, but I can't commit to him. I do, however, think for his fantasy value, where he's going, I think he's going late enough that I'll take a flyer on him as like the tight end 7, tight end 8.
No, I think that it's fair. It's a lot of the discussion that we've had over the offseason, really, especially Mario has been a guy that he's been the low guy on him. I've been kind of in the middle, but more high end on him. But he has the same kind of question mark. So I think you bring up a lot of good points. So, and you mentioned that you're fine taking him, around that tight end 7 ADP. Do you have him ranked there, or a little higher, or where do you have him ranked?
So I have him ranked around tight end 7. I don't know what I say. Tight end 7. I know it's kind of a cop out, but honestly, I would love to have him higher, because I think I have him right now behind Kyle Pitts. I just think Kyle Pitts is like, I have no reason not to think Kyle Pitts is going to play a full season when I don't think Darren Waller is going to play a full season.
I'm with you. I like this 60% of games the last two. We've seen regression in those points per game during those times. It makes me nervous. I think this opens up a conversation to be had here because if you're feeling a little bit that way, there's opportunity. If you kind of the start of this was maybe Daniel Jones takes that leap forward. Looking at the wide receiver group, there are plenty of options that could be fantasy viable this season. One of the things we asked Heath Cummings about the Chiefs, and I think it makes sense here too. Do you tend to avoid the uncertainty of a wide receiver room like this, or do you like taking shots on some of these guys, considering their ADP is so nice?
I think for the ADP, I like taking a flyer on a guy like Jalen Hyatt, who, as we mentioned, like he's going to be the deep ball threat, and like the Giants took him for a reason. So I think the Giants see something in him where Saquon's going to get as many carries as possible, draws the defense up to the front, and you throw it over the top to Hyatt. Something simple like that, and I like the possibility of that there. But in general, no, I try to stay away from a receiver room like the Giants. I think the Chiefs are an exception where you have Patrick Mahomes and like any of those guys can become a star player. But with the Giants, I really want to see one player step up and become that receiver one from this group before I make any assessment. And I mean, the preseasons, take it for what you will. I saw most of the targets going to Darren Waller. He had, I think, 3 catches in the opening drive, or 3 targets at least.
Yeah, no, that definitely makes a lot of sense. Like you said, the ADP is nice, so you like the ADP, but when the difference between this group and the Chiefs group is Mahomes is going to throw for 1,000 to 1,500 yards more, so it's a lot more upside taking some late flyers on KC than here. So I think that's a good point to make. So moving over to the backfield though, it's pretty straightforward. All Saquon all day. He enjoyed a real nice bounce back season last year, and so are you expecting more of the same this year?
Yeah, I think as long as he's healthy, like the Giants they showed last year they were gonna use him as much as possible in the offense, and like it's one of those things where this is a 1-year deal. It's gonna be for however amount of money plus incentives. So Saquon's gonna be going for the incentives, and for the Giants, they already said that they don't want to give him the long-term deal, right? They gave Daniel Jones the huge contract, 1-year deal for Saquon, so I think they're just gonna run him to the ground, honestly. I mean,
that's
you guys probably remember him from the Penn State years and are kind of okay with seeing some Saquon run into the ground, but the Giants are going to use every last bit of him.
Yeah.
No, it definitely for sure. And then I'm with you on that. So looking at Saquon, he's kind of going as a second round pick at this point. Where's he ranked for you among running backs, and are you okay taking him with the second round pick?
Yeah, I would absolutely take him in a second-round pick. I think in a PPR league, no, honestly, it doesn't matter. Any kind of format, I think the Giants are just going to use him as much as possible. You guys tell me, I'm not huge on handcuffs, but I think Saquon is one of those guys that you have to handcuff. Would you agree that, like, just because how his usage is so high that if he were to get hurt, like, whoever's next up, that's got to be a huge bump.
I think that's the scary part, right? Like, who is next up? Is it Eric Gray? Is it Matt Breida? Like, it's tough to even. I saw Paris Campbell taking some snaps out of the backfield in off season a little bit.
Would you be cool with that? Like, I mean, I don't know. You run a spread offense, run a triple option play with Saquon to your right, Paris Campbell to your left. Why not?
I picked up Paris Campbell for that reason. I was like, hey, if we're gonna make him into like a fast Debo, I'm with it.
For sure.
Yeah, I mean, you can get real creative with that with him. So he could definitely be a gadget guy.
I agree.
There is a lot of like high talent on this team that the biggest concern is their health. I know we keep going back to that. Is there anybody that we haven't mentioned? We just talked about. I feel like the whole offense at this point. But is there anybody that we haven't mentioned on this team that we should be keeping an eye out for fantasy this year?
Honestly, I think we kicked the tires on him, but
I almost ignored this question completely for that reason.
I don't know whoever else you guys could think of. I mean, maybe if if the Giants go out and sign another tight end to back up Darren Waller when he gets hurt, you take the backup tight end.
That's a good point because it is somebody that we haven't talked about. Probably Bellinger. I mean, to keep an eye out, but I don't know if you could roster him. I think the other thing that you just brought up is if something was to happen, Barkley, there's still some RBs out there that I think they would sign before rolling Breda out there. I don't know.
I don't know. I mean, I think they might go with Breda. They might go with Eric Gray. They did take a flyer on him late in the draft, and he's I also think there's a decent chance Daniel Jones just takes over the red zone rushes. I mean, he got a lot of the carries last year. He got a lot of the touchdowns, and also, I mean, I want to say Darren Waller can be the red zone target when he's on the field, so that could help them too. But it's just going to be who can stay healthy.
Yeah. So, Giants aside, now obviously you can include Giants here if they are, and maybe we talked about this a little bit pre-show. Who are your flag plant or your my guy players for this year?
We did talk about him a little bit pre-show. He's your Ohio State Buckeyes, my New York Jets, Garrett Wilson. He was last year's Offensive Rookie of the Year, over 1,000 yards receiving, and it was with Zach Wilson, Joe Flacco, and I believe Mike White were the quarterbacks. White. I mean, if he can make Mike White looking great,
right?
Aaron Rodgers is in town. There's a new sheriff. I mean, as a Jets fan, I don't know how to act with the quarterback, so this is fantastic. I'm so excited for Garrett Wilson. Another guy I'm more excited about than I think most people who we talk to. Miles Sanders got completely forgotten about on the Eagles last year, right? Jalen Hurts, A.J. Brown, terrific offense. Miles Sanders was slept on. He's going real late. You can get him as I think running back 18, 19 now, and he's gonna be right there with Bryce Young, rookie quarterback, which means probably a lot of checkdowns. And you saw what they do with McCaffrey. There's no reason that they wouldn't run Miles Sanders a lot. But I'm interested in who you guys have.
So obviously you heard my one. It was Garrett Wilson as well. So I'm right there with you. I just as a side note before I get into my running back, because my running back is probably Alexander Madison, just because I think the volume will be there. I got Madison and Miles Sanders in my main auction league, and I got Miles Sanders for 23, 24. It was something under $25. And I was like, this is a great value for what these touches look like.
Yeah, he's going to be a bell cow back. Why not?
Yep.
Yeah, I would say for me, I mean, it's definitely QB is definitely Anthony Richardson. I mean, I've been hyping that from the jump. So
we need to get a poster in the back there of just A-Rich.
I was gonna say I'm gonna have to make a new green screen backdrop, just me and Anthony Richardson hanging out.
Yeah, like this. Yeah.
Yeah. But so yeah, I've hyped up Anthony Richardson every show. So it's kind of a running bit at this point. But Anthony Richardson, I would say Joe Mixon for me, just especially early in the draft season, he was going real late. Christian Watson's been one that I'm I really, really love. And then Kyle Pitts for me. Those are kind of my guys that aren't super, super high end. They're kind of mid-round guys, but I'm well above consensus, even for a mid kind of 4th to 7th round range guys.
I definitely agree with you on Kyle Pitts. I think honestly the Falcons, they're going to surprise a lot of people this year. I mean, Desmond Ridder can't possibly have a worse season than Marcus Mariota, right? So that's a bump to Drake London. I like him a lot coming out of USC. I didn't see anything from him last year, but he's got a quarterback again. So Kyle Pitts, Bijan's going to be so much fun to watch.
Yeah. Oh, I agree.
One last question before you head out of here. Have you been watching Hard Knocks?
Oh, I've been watching Hard Knocks.
Yeah. What a great season so far. They've been just focusing on A-Rod. You get a lot of Garrett Wilson. They've been focusing on there was a lot of Quinnen Williams, all the big names. I've never seen a season like this.
Quinnen Williams became my favorite player. Can I tell you, he goes, shout out to my daughter, shout out to my wife. Shout out to Optimus Prime. Shout out to my mom. Who's right
He's
there
hilarious,
in between wife and mom is Optimus Prime. You gotta love him.
Got his priorities.
And
It's
Aaron Rodgers seems like he's so happy to be there.
He really does. He really does.
Yeah, he really seems
Completely different A-Rod. It's so crazy.
Yep, for sure. I'm excited for you guys. We talked about it obviously a little bit before because we're Browns fans, so we understand the whole QB. Never really dealing with a good QB, so I'm definitely excited for you guys over there.
We look like the dried SpongeBob meme, just so thirsty. So thirsty for a good QB.
You guys have a QB. He comes with his baggage, but you guys got a QB.
That's right.
That's true.
I still, and I said this recently, I still hold Baker still holds a special place in my heart. And now I don't know if he's a Super Bowl QB, but he was good enough to get us to the playoffs, and I'll take it.
Yeah.
But yeah. Anyway, Eric, man, we just wanted to say again that we can't thank you enough for joining us, talk some Giants, some fantasy football with us. It's been a pleasure, man. And before we let you go, though, let the viewers know where they can find you, all your content, if you got anything coming soon, anything like you'd like to promote.
Yeah, you guys can find me on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it, at Mintzer Sports. I'll be writing about the Jets throughout the season. Maybe I'll throw in some just random thoughts about the NFL as we go along, and I'll be around on Twitter constantly interacting with whoever wants to talk ball.
Truly appreciate you coming out and taking the time to talk the Giants with us, and we'll have to get you on again sometime in the season, especially if the Jets start off 6-0 like you and I are both expecting.
We now have Josh Hudson on to talk some Philadelphia Eagles. He's a huge fan and one of the best in the industry. We got a chance to watch him on the FF Face-Off Podathon for Hayden Hurst, and I was blown away, so I had to try to get him on for the Eagles. You can check him out on his Twitter at @the1Hudsonian. That is the number one Hudsonian, and he is the founding member of Club Fantasy FFL and Women of Fantasy Football, which is really awesome, dude. That's a great cause, and you are killing it over there. Josh, thanks for joining us, man. How you doing?
I appreciate you, Rob. Those are some very kind words. One of the best in the industry. I don't know about all that. I'm just a guy that likes to talk, but let's roll with it. I like it.
Yeah, I love it. Like I said, we got you on to talk. I'm assuming it's your hometown, Philadelphia Eagles.
I'm actually not from Philly.
Really? Where are you from?
I used to live in South Jersey when I was a kid.
Okay.
And I grew up, I'm a huge Miami Hurricanes fan from college, and just watching Donovan McNabb over the years. Kind of just followed him to the NFL because, kept whooping up on my Hurricanes. And I'm like, damn, this guy's good. I don't want to like him, but I really like him. So, that's just kind of how
that's funny how it's funny how one player can really start your fandom.
Especially when every single Philadelphia Eagles fan at that time wanted Ricky Williams at number 2 overall.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, dude. Yeah. Some major departures for the Eagles this year. Miles Sanders is the big offensive weapon. Then there were some really big defensive players that left as well. And then they bring in DeAndre Swift, Rashad Penny, Marcus Mariota. And then, of course, they had to go out and draft a bunch of Georgia defensive players. I mean, if it's not broken, don't stop doing what you're doing. With these moves, what are kind of your expectations for the Eagles this season? Is it like Super Bowl, or are we mad?
Well, I mean, yeah, of course. You go to the Super Bowl last year, you lose. The goal is, all right, we got to get back because we got to win it. We were good enough to do it last year, and I know a lot of people are like, were they though? Because their schedule was really easy. At the end of the day, you beat who's in front of you. And, well, of course, the tables have flipped this year. We have on paper the strongest strength of schedule. So it's a bit of a gauntlet when you really look at the schedule. But the biggest thing that I look at with this team, it's less so much about the players as it is the schemes now, because we lost not only our defensive coordinator, but also our offensive coordinator. And they're now breaking in 2 guys that have so offensive coordinator Brian Johnson has never called plays on the NFL level. Now, I know their defensive coordinator was he was previously with the Bears, I believe, and then he came over from Seattle this past year. Sean Desai, I believe his name is. Don't quote me on that. But you're still working and calling plays around players that don't know your tendencies as a play caller. So there's bound to be some hiccups very early. So like when I was going through and looking at this schedule, I'm like, okay, we're going to finish above 500 because there's just too much talent on this team not to.
Yeah.
But I think at worst, we're a 9-8 team. And I could very easily see us starting 3-3 this year. And it's not because I think that there's 3 teams that are better than us in those first 6 games. It's the hiccups working in new coordinators, right? And, you know, I know that Jalen Hurts has a previous relationship with Brian Johnson going further back than just the NFL level, but you still need to kind of figure out like, all right, I'm going to call this play for Jalen at this situation.
Yeah.
Where does that camaraderie fit into play? So I'm a little nervous just from that perspective, because I do think that, you know, there's likely to be regression to the mean as well. We were one of the healthiest teams in 2022. Yeah. Asking that to be replicated in 2023 it really is a long shot. I mean, the only real significant offensive skill position piece that missed time last year was Dallas Goedert. You got 17 games out of AJ Brown, Devonta Smith, Jalen Hurts played 15 games. And then Miles Sanders played all 17 for the first time in his career.
Which is crazy.
So, yeah, exactly. So, like, that's what I'm saying. Like, we were insanely lucky when it came to injuries last year. So, I think that this team is probably like 12-5, 13-4 realistically. But I would not be shocked if we're like 9-8 and, you know, only a wild card team.
Yeah, dude. I think you bring up some really important, you know, points there where you look at the team, what they did last season, and you don't really think about especially the coaching moves. That's the one thing that a lot of, especially the casual fantasy football players, don't really pay too much attention to. And it does make a huge impact, especially early on in the season, like you said, while they're trying to figure stuff out and how they're going to acclimate with these coaches and players. And let's start with the main focal point of this offense, Jalen Hurts, one of the, you know, he took a massive step forward last season. He became one of the most elite quarterbacks in the entire NFL. There was, you know, nobody was really calling for his job the year before, but everyone was kind of like, okay, he's on a short leash. We got to see what this guy can do. He's got to take a step forward, especially in the pass game. And he did massively. Now, do you expect that growth? Do you think he can grow even more from what he did last season? Or are you, like you said, is there some regression due with how well they performed last year?
Realistically, I mean, you know, anytime you look at young players, your trajectory is, all right, they have nowhere to go but up, right?
Mm-hmm.
We saw who Jalen Hurts was when he first got in the league. He started those last, 3 to 4 games, his rookie season, filling in for Carson Wentz, or being, started over Carson Wentz, excuse me. And then just even the leap from those last few games that first season to what he did his second season. I mean, he improved his completion percentage by 10% and took a team that had no business being in the playoff chase into the playoffs. Now, yeah, they got waxed by the Bucs. I get it. We didn't have any business being in the playoffs. Yeah. So, I didn't really look at that as like some failure. It was, well, shit, all right, I'm along for the ride. It's free money, baby. Let's go. Going into last year, it was, all right, we saw some steps. Is Jalen Hurts going to take another leap? And again, we saw it. They worked through his progressions. He tightened up a lot of his mechanics. He looked like an NFL quarterback. And so now you're going into, all right, he's got his new contract. He still has elite weapons all around him. You bring in Rashad Penny, you bring in DeAndre Swift, basically to kind of, create what they had with Miles Sanders from last year. You still have AJ Brown, Devonta Smith, who both of them saw over a 27% target share. And I don't think that's talked about enough.
Yeah.
Dallas Goedert's always missed games, for whatever reason. It's just maybe his play style or just the dude is just unlucky. But, for his career, he has a 1.8 yards per route run, which is one of the best amongst the top tight ends in the league currently. So, this and again, one of the best, if not the best offensive lines in football. Yeah. So, yeah, there's a hole right now at, I believe it's left guard, where they lost Isaac Samalu to the Steelers. You're potentially working in Cam Jurgens, who really is a true center and is learning a new position. Same thing with the rookie Tyler Steen that they brought in from Alabama. He was traditionally a tackle. They're kind of working him in at guard. So that really is the weak link. But then you still have the anchors. You have Mailata. you have Dickerson, you have Lane Johnson, you have Kelsey, who, again, Lane Johnson missed a few games last year, too, due to injury. He's up there in age. Kelsey has been flirting with retirement, it feels like, every year for the last 5 years. So there's definitely some things that could go wrong. But I think what really separates Hurts is the mentality. He wants to be great.
Yeah.
The way that he talks, the way that he presents himself, everybody buys into this kid. And they're saying, you know what? He's my ride or die. Let's go. And you know, when I broke down kind of I recently released an article on DeAndre Swift for our website, clubfantasyffl.com. Shameless plug. And one of the things that I looked at was quarterbacks with 100 plus rush attempts and how they target the running back position via the passing game.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the closest comps that I found when I was doing this was Josh Allen. And you look at what Josh Allen did his first couple years as a full-time starter, and then that leap that he took in his third full year as a starter, he jumped up to about 35 pass attempts per game, just over that. So if Jalen Hurts is able to make that kind of leap, because he only threw the ball about, I think it was 30.67 pass attempts per game in 2022. And you could make a case that if he starts all 17 games, he's the league MVP. So if he makes that type of leap, throwing an extra 5 pass attempts per game, you would think that his rush attempts overall might come down a bit. But if he's throwing more, that ultimately benefits everybody. It benefits A.J. Brown. It benefits Devonta Smith. And if he keeps that target or that completion percentage, you know, between that 64 and 66%, he's going to be above 30 passing touchdowns. And then you've got what he does on the ground. He has 10 plus rushing touchdown upside as well. So so even if the defense regresses, he still has the opportunity to keep this offense afloat because of his ability as a football player. And that's what you want when you're talking in terms of fantasy as well as NFL.
Yeah, and in terms of fantasy, you know, we see him going QB3 right around the 2-3 turn. Is that too rich for your blood, or are you buying into him at that ADP?
So I've always been a fade quarterback kind of guy in redraft, simply because there's never truly been like those elite separators between like, you know, QB3 and say QB12, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like maybe it's a point and a half per game. We saw a pretty massive like stretch there where it's basically it's Mahomes, it's Allen, it's Hurts, and then it's the field, right?
Everybody else.
Exactly. So I'm kind of going into drafts this year with the mindset of, yeah, I'm still okay fading quarterback early, but if one of those top 3 guys is sitting there at like the end of the third, maybe the beginning of the 4th round, if like that's kind of where my draft spot is, I'm okay making that pick and taking one of those elite guys, because again, like if you end up with someone like Josh Allen or Jalen Hurts, you have not only a QB1, but you also have at worst an RB2.
Yeah.
All in one player. So even if I miss out on, you know, that second running back or that elite tight end, maybe like it makes up for it in that. And then I'm just going to go read Andrew Cooper's work on Fantasy Alarm and follow his yin yang tight end strategy. Like I'm all about it.
No, I love that, man. I love what you just said there, because this year we obviously see the QB ADP getting, all of them are really kind of skyrocketing just because of how drastic it was last season with the difference in those 3 quarterbacks and the rest of the field. I'm with you. This is the first year where I'm really considering maybe shooting for one of those guys and like late third, like you said, kind of late third if they're sitting there, because it's just such a positional mismatch if you have one of those 3 guys. And Jalen Hurts could easily finish as QB1. So he's one of those guys.
QB1 in points per game last year.
He was. And as long as he stays healthy, which I don't think there's there's not a ton of reason to think that he won't, besides his play style, but he is one of those guys that I'm actively targeting. And you can't talk Jalen Hurts. We've already brought up some of his offensive weapons. Let's talk about A.J. Brown to kind of kick this off. Now, he was another one that took a massive step forward coming into this offense from Tennessee. He finished as wide receiver 6 last year in PPR formats. I mean, we can look at all of his underlying metrics, right? His targets, target share, air yard share, yards per route run. They were all at elite levels last season throughout the NFL. What is kind of your expectation for A.J. Brown this season? Because we know how he was in Tennessee, where he had those boom games, and then you would see some regression, but that could be Tannehill as well. Do you expect another really solid season from A.J. Brown?
Historically speaking, probably expecting injury, which I hate to say, but it's just kind of when you look at trends, when you look at his body of work, and as I mentioned in the beginning of this, there's going to be some regression to the mean when it comes to injuries. I mean, it's just unrealistic to think that an NFL offense is going to stay healthy for more than one full year at a time. So from that perspective, yeah, maybe there's a little bit of a downtick, but we'll set the standard and say, you know what, AJ Brown is penciled in for 17 games.
Yeah.
If that's the case, it's going to be more of the same. It truly is. I mean, you can sit here and say that adding an offensive weapon like DeAndre Swift is going to take away targets because, over the last 2 years, he's commanded 70 plus targets. Unless he's Christian McCaffrey, he's not taking targets away from anybody. So there's never been an instance where two wide receivers that have topped 100 targets in a season, where a running back has come in and commanded even a 16% target share.
Yeah.
Like, stop and think about that for a second. So unless there is some sort of drastic injury where AJ Brown and or Devonta Smith miss significant time, these are the two guys in this offense. It's AJ Brown, it's Devonta Smith. And then the targets just kind of get divvied up between Swift and Goddard, maybe Gainwell, definitely not Rashad Penny, and definitely not any of the slot receivers that nobody wants to throw to because they all suck.
Yeah,
so,
I think we learned our lesson last year with that.
Exactly. Well, it also helps that Quez Watkins has bricks for hands and Olamide Zaccheaus really is just Olamide Zaccheaus. But, AJ Brown is what he is, right? He's a game breaker. He's a guy that's he averages 16.5 yards per reception. He's always been kind of a perennial 60% catch guy. So even at 140 targets, you're looking at about 80 receptions. I think I statted him down a little bit. I think I went to about 15.8 yards per reception this year. And he came in as my wide receiver 10, which is no slouch. That's still a great season. Could he finish higher than that? 100%. I mean, you've already seen Cooper Kupp dealing with a hamstring injury. Stephon Diggs is battling with the front office and Josh Allen and Devontae Adams has QB issues. And, there's always something that goes wrong, right? So, sure, AJ Brown, you're going to definitely see more defensive attention kind of shifted his way. But still, my favorite scene from the Eagles season last year is Devonta Smith catching that touchdown against the Steelers and then saying, you and you and you. Three guys there could not stop him from catching a damn touchdown. So it doesn't matter how much defensive attention you give to A.J. Brown. He's going to catch the football. He's going to make a play, and Jalen Hurts is not going to be afraid to throw it to him. The added benefit is you have an elite wide receiver 2 next to him in Devonta Smith that in the event Hurts says, you know what, let's not risk it. I got my homie over here that's in single coverage because you can't triple cover A.J. Brown and not have single coverage on Devonta Smith.
Yeah, dude. Speaking of Devontae, I mean, I love that little segue right there. He was wide receiver 9 last season. He went above what I thought he was going to do last year. He really took a step forward coming into his third season out of Alabama. Now, you said that you have some injury concerns this season for A.J. Brown. Who are you kind of targeting out of those two? Like, are you more comfortable going with Devonta Smith over AJ just with that concern?
Yeah, for me, I mean, stop and think about this. As great as AJ Brown was, Devonta Smith led this team in receptions last year.
Yeah.
The big difference is the yards per reception, right? And AJ Brown obviously has the big play touchdown upside. Devonta Smith is kind of like that 6 to 7 touchdowns per season kind of guy. And really that's just because AJ Brown is so dominant.
He's so good.
Dallas Goedert's been a red zone weapon in the past. He only had 3 touchdowns last year. You expect that to probably, tick up a notch especially if he ends up playing 14 plus games. But for me, we've seen plenty of offenses in the past have top 5 wide receivers. Hasn't happened much recently, but I don't think we've truly seen a tandem like an A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith that are so very different in what they bring to the table. Like, as great as Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle are, they're very similar threats at wide receiver.
That's a good point.
So it's basically
really
a pick your poison, right? With Smith and Brown, one is the deep guy, one is the big play guy, the other one's going to be the chain mover. And that's why there's such a big gap between their total receiving yards, right? They can both have fairly equal, if not maybe slightly leaning towards Smith because of his higher catch percentage in terms of receptions. But, the big difference there truly is the yards after the catch, especially, and then overall touchdowns. But there's a world where Devonta Smith catches 100 passes this year.
Yeah, easily.
Name me a wide receiver 2 in the NFL that had a 27% target share.
Yeah, I was just going to say
that's absurd.
That target share just between the two of them. I mean, this offense clearly runs through those two. Mm-hmm. And if those numbers continue, like you said, man, there's no reason, especially with how good Devonta Smith is, he can't haul in 100 passes, 100 plus passes, and stay in that top 10 category again this season.
Exactly. So that's why for me, I would much rather take Smith at his current ADP, because with A.J. Brown, you're always going to have those, boom bust games, because that's just who he is. He's a big play wide receiver. So I think if you're looking more from a consistency standpoint, Smith probably is more your bag. But, given the ADP gap, I think Smith is going as, let me double check on Underdog right now. Wide receiver 12 or 13, excuse me.
13.
I mean, A.J. Brown's at 6. He's at 13. You're still looking at, a top 2 round selection. I think if you can get Devonta Smith in the 3rd round, that's an absolute home run, in my opinion.
Easy smash for me. If I can get Devonta there, I think he's going to have another really solid season. The only, I guess, a concern for me is Dallas Goedert coming back. If he can stay healthy all those games, which is a big question mark, like you've kind of alluded to. He was tight end 3 in points per game, weeks 1 through 10, before he had that injury at 12.6 points per game. Now, is there a world where he eats into that elite target share that these two guys had?
The way that I did my projections, yes. So I've got Devonta Smith at about 124, which obviously is less than what he had last year, because again, you go into a season expecting 15 plus games from your skill position guys, so you kind of want to do your projections based on that. And Goddard, as I mentioned earlier, he's pretty elite when it comes to yards per route run. Just the last 2 years alone, he's finished 2nd and 4th respectively amongst tight ends with yards per route run. He averages 1.8 over his career. Kelsey currently sits at 2.16, Andrews 2.18, Kittle 2.34, Waller 1.99, Pitts 1.92. And then you have a guy that's being taken over him in TJ Hawkinson, who sits at 1.51. So Goddard is somebody that doesn't need that elite target share to be an effective tight end. But again, I'll reference Andrew Cooper and his work at Fantasy Alarm, because he's kind of become like the new tight end whisperer.
Yes, he has.
When we look at what we want out of an elite tight end, we're looking for a tight end that's going to be 1st or 2nd on their respective team in target share. You're looking at guys that can get down the field, that have the speed, that have those elite, yak numbers that are stretching the field. Goddard has basically all of that, except he's now at best 3rd in the pecking order. So, but again, because of what he brings to the table with, the yards that he's able to accumulate. So even if he only has, say, 60 receptions, you're still looking at about 85 targets, which again is great. And he could get up there with 800 yards, but I still think that a lot of that's going to rely on Jalen Hurts going above that 30, to 31 pass attempts per game level.
Yeah,
that
makes a lot of sense.
Now you can look at the running game and who they've brought in, and you say, well, Rashad Penny can't stay healthy. He's never played more than 11 games in a season. DeAndre Swift is always nicked up. He's also never had more than 150 rush attempts per season, or 151 or something along those lines.
Mm-hmm.
So if Hurts ends up having to be the guy that runs the football more, that's going to be a problem. And ultimately, they're going to have to throw the football more, which then favors Goddard that, all right, he can still be amongst that elite with being the third target in that offense.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. Especially with, like you said, the running back position. There's a bunch of injuries and stuff like that. Real quick to end this Goddard talk. He's going tight end 6. That's right around the 5'6" turn right now. Is that too rich for your blood?
I don't hate it. My kind of pecking order that I'm looking at in terms of tight end, like if I miss on Kelsey, if I miss on Andrews, the next guy that I'm looking at is Darren Waller, simply because he has the clearest path to being essentially the wide receiver one on his respective team. And then, you've got question marks with Pitts, obviously, because of the quarterback situation. You have questions with Hawkinson. I don't love him from a yak perspective, but, he saw a ton of targets when he went to Minnesota. But then they went and spent a first-round pick on a wide receiver, which could potentially drop him to third in the pecking order in a high-volume passing offense. So I think for me, tight end 6 is probably fine. But I think if I miss on Kelsey, Andrews, and Waller, I'm probably just waiting it out, and I'm going to take more of that like yin yang approach that Andrew Cooper at Fantasy Alarm talks about all the time. Yeah,
I love that. I'm with you because Waller is my kind of, flag plant kind of player where I'm stamping. I'm trying to get him in every draft. We were talking about the running backs a little bit. We have, DeAndre Swift going at RB24, Rashad Penny RB38, Kenneth Gainwell going at RB59. Do you find yourself drafting one of these guys over the other two?
The one that I would be targeting the most is Rashad Penny. I think the depressed ADP simply because he's never stayed healthy. I get it, but you just saw Miles Sanders stay healthy behind an elite offensive line and rack up 259 carries. And for a guy that's averaged over 5 yards a carry in his career, Rashad Penny's pretty damn efficient, and even more so efficient than Miles Sanders. So he doesn't need the type of targets in the passing game that can keep him elevated in the wide receiver or the running back conversation if he's able to stay healthy. Obviously, that's a big if. But when you're looking at RB38, all those guys around there are risks, right? So why not take a dart throw on a risk that has the potential to be a top 15 running back when most of the other guys in that area are, backups or handcuffs or, prime 0 RB targets that really don't have that type of upside when it comes to the amount of carries that they could command in an offense.
Yeah, dude, I completely agree with you. Penny has been one of the guy every single season, man. I get suckered in, I draft him, and then halfway through the year I have to drop him because of the injuries. But he is good.
I mean, but he was going ahead of the RB38 at that point, right?
Yeah, now it's a steal because, like you said, I think if I'm not mistaken, I believe his career yards per carry are right around 6 yards per carry. Like he puts up
6.2 yards per carry last year behind a not so great Seattle offensive line.
Yeah. When he is on the field, the dude he's one of the best rushing attacks in the league. I think it's hard to argue that. So you're kind of plugged in with the in Philadelphia. Are there any rumors coming out of camp who are of these running backs? Are they looking good? Is anyone kind of taking the lead as that number one guy? Because there are 3 of them there that are fighting for time.
Well, don't leave out the giant killer Boston Scott, who's good for 2 starts a year against the Giants. No, so I mean, obviously the big word was Rashad Penny taking the first snaps at running back in training camp. And I fully expect Rashad Penny to be the lead back in this offense, right? As long as he's healthy, he's going to be the lead guy. Swift has always been better as a change of pace back, somebody that they can kind of rotate in. He's ultra efficient as well. And again, you put ultra efficient guys. I mean, just in week 1 last year with the Lions, DeAndre Swift averaged like over almost 9 yards per touch against this Eagles defense. So the Eagles know exactly what DeAndre Swift brings to the table. And, they've been talking about Swift being used almost exclusively as a pass catcher, which to me, that just tells me that really is truly how they want to use him. They want to use him more out of the slot versus, the typical like RB out in the flat or running those little like arrow routes. Like they want to split him out. They want to create those types of mismatches that they can get away from with guys like Olamide Zaccheaus and Quez Watkins, right? DeAndre Swift is a very good pass catcher. He can catch the football.
And route runner.
Yeah, exactly. So you put him in the slot or mix him around in the formation. Maybe you move Smith or Brown into the slot and you got Swift out wide. Like that, those truly are 3 of your 4 best pass catchers. And then with Dallas Goedert into the mix. The issue that I have with Swift more so is just, it's again, quarterbacks that take off and run the football really don't target running backs at a high rate.
Yeah.
So with those 2 alpha dogs at wide receiver, there's a much smaller piece of the pie for DeAndre Swift, especially when you factor in an elite level pass catcher at tight end in Dallas Goedert. So, that's why I'm kind of out on Swift just based on the ADP. Now, if he keeps slipping, then yeah, I'm going to say, you know what, a guy that can run the ball 100 times, maybe if we're lucky, see 70 targets, that has RB2 upside, and I'm all about it. But you're talking about a guy at RB24 that if Penny stays healthy, he's not hitting RB24. It's not happening.
Yeah. No, I love that. Josh, you brought some really good points in there. That's my big concern with Swift as well. It's just we know that the data behind rushing quarterbacks, how they don't like to throw to the RBs. But if they are splitting him out, that's something interesting to kind of keep in the back of your mind where his yards per route run are going to skyrocket for the running back position. And then he could be, essentially a slot receiver in this offense, which would be awesome to see because I think he is, like you said, one of the better pass catching running backs in the league and one of the better offensive weapons in general, where if he gets the ball, he's super efficient and really elusive and he can take the ball, get to the end zone and be one of those, special players. But that's something very interesting to keep in the back of your mind when you're drafting. And then one question here I want to ask, I always ask this, are there any other offensive weapons on this Philadelphia Eagles team that you're interested in, or is it just so hyper-focused with the 2 wide receivers and tight end that this is kind of it?
Yeah, I mean, I'm staying away from the slot receivers, Quez Watkins, Olamide Zaccheaus. I mean, they're right now in my projections, I have them pretty much split at about 32 and 31 targets respectively, simply because I don't know who's going to win that job right now. And like I said, I think Swift ends up taking a lot of those slot targets anyway. And they do target the slot quite a bit, or really not even quite a bit when you compare it to most other teams. They're only about 7.5 targets to the slot per game, which actually is on the lower end of team totals. But for me, like if I'm going the 0 RB drafter route, I'm definitely taking a dart throw on Kenneth Gainwell. We've talked about throughout this entire segment. We know the injury history with Rashad Penny. We know the injury history with DeAndre Swift. He's going to be the next guy up. It's not going to be Boston Scott. Boston Scott's pushing 29 years old.
Yeah.
He's good for 2 games a year, and that's when they play the Giants. That's it. Like, that's your DFS play of the year right there. He's good for a touchdown at minimum each of those games. So Gainwell would be the only other guy that I would have on my radar. I know there's been some camp buzz with Tyree Jackson, the converted quarterback to tight end. He got hurt in training camp last year, I believe. But he's a really athletic guy, can make a lot of plays. And truthfully, if he's healthy, I think he's a better pass catching option than what they have in Grant Calcaterra. And trying to think who the other kid is. Crap.
We're going deep down the depth chart today.
Oh, right. That's what I do,
love
man. Who's the other one? Jack Stoll. That's the other guy.
Yeah, that's right.
So, Jackson, yeah, he's got an uphill battle. But again, it's the position change. I wouldn't be shocked if he spent some time on the practice squad. But like I said, he's the athletic guy. He's the one that if Goddard were to miss significant time, that truthfully would be the guy that could be the difference maker in the middle of the field as a pass catching option at tight end.
That's awesome. So that's someone to keep an eye on. If there is a Goddard injury, he'd be the one to maybe take a shot on over the other 2. And then one final question before I let you go. Who are your plant the flag players this season? Like I said, mine's Darren Waller, but who are the guys you want to go get in every single one of your drafts and try to win another fantasy football title, man?
So my biggest flag plan is I have Jamar Chase as the overall wide receiver 1 this year. I think with his combination of elite target share, he actually led all wide receivers last year in targets per game at 11.2. We saw his yards per reception kind of dip a little bit last year, going from 18 his rookie year to 12 last year. Excuse me. I mean, a healthy Burrow, a healthy Chase, I think is probably the most dangerous quarterback to wide receiver combination in the league, and I don't think it's particularly close.
It's hard to argue that.
I have him as my overall wide receiver one this year, and especially considering the rate that he scores touchdowns is pretty unmatched amongst the elite at the position. I'm bullish on Justin Herbert this year. I think he jumps into that elite quarterback tier that we talked about earlier with Mahomes and Allen and Hurts. That guy has weapons for days. And then you bring in a Kellen Moore to run this offense where he likes that up tempo. Justin Herbert has finished second, and fourth the last 3 years in overall pass attempts. And now you bring in an offensive coordinator that has no issue throwing the football. If you told me by season's end that Justin Herbert threw the football 750 times, I'd say, why isn't it 800? Because there is that possibility. And then my last one that I think a lot of people are really sleeping on, I have Ramondre Stevenson as a top 3 running back this year. The last time that Bill O'Brien had a running back that they could do it all was when he traded DeAndre Hopkins to Arizona to bring in David Johnson. And he used him all over as a running back and a wide receiver. Ramondre Stevenson was 3rd among running backs last year in targets. And who do they have to throw the football to? Because they swung and missed on DeAndre Hopkins.
Yeah,
he's a better pass catcher than Juju Smith-Schuster. I'm sorry, Juju ain't all that.
I think I'm with you, man. That's something that's not being talked about enough.
So you add in the pass catching upside with what he brings to the table as a runner. Give me all the Ramondre Stevenson this year, and at the price that I can get him at, that is a slam dunk for me.
Joshua, man, I love all 3 of those. I think you just hit it on the head. You hit a home run. You're going to help some people win their championship.
Well, we'll see. We still got a season to play out. So,
Josh, man, thank you so much for joining us today. Like I said, we greatly appreciate it. We greatly appreciate you stopping by with us.
Absolutely.
Let the listeners know where they can find you and what you have coming out for the season.
Yeah, I mean, feel free to follow me on Twitter. It's basically just the cheerleader account. I've gotten to know a lot of people in this industry over the years, and most of my work is done via podcast. So I tend to try to share everybody else's work, but you can follow me at the One Hudsonian. That's number 1. And then all of my work is with my website. It's at Club Fantasy FFL, the URL, clubfantasyffl.com. It's at Club Fantasy FFL on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. And then, our big push in the month of August is our Women of Fantasy. So we do a series of raffles where we raise money for our Women of Fantasy and Galvanize Scholarship Fund. If you're unfamiliar with Galvanize, it's an organization that was founded by Fox Sports reporter Laura Oakman. Basically, what she wants to do is give women the opportunities in the world of sports, the resources that she didn't have when she was growing into her role and her positions. So we had Laura on our second season, of Women of Fantasy. We've gotten to know her a lot over the last year plus, and she's just an absolute gem of a human being. We sent our first scholarship winner to a Galvanized seminar in Nashville in June, and it truly is. It's a life-changing experience for so many women that want to get involved in sports. So we're extremely proud to partner with Laura. And our first Women of Fantasy show for season 4 kicks off on August 9th at 7 p.m. Eastern with one of our co-hosts, Kelly Singh, the other one, Faith Enist. She's actually going to be traveling to Canton that day for the Expo weekend, but she'll be rejoining Kelly for weeks 2, 3, and 4. So,
dude, Josh, that is awesome. And that's so.
And be sure to follow Women of Fantasy on Twitter and Instagram at women_ff. And the website, womenoffantasyfootball.com. I always forget that, and Faith always gives me shit about it. So.
No, it's an awesome thing that you guys are doing over there. And, it's something that hopefully the listeners can go out, follow them, help them out, do whatever you can, listen to the podcast. And Josh, again, man, thank you for coming and talking some Eagles with us.
I appreciate you, Rob. If I'd known back when I was a kid that I was going to be doing a show with the Dad Bod Fantasy Squad, I would have started on my Dad Bod when I was 15 instead of 16. So.
That's awesome, man. Thanks, buddy.
Appreciate you, man.
All right. Next up, we have another amazing guest for you guys. This guy is the host of the FFRZ Redemption Pod that you can find over on Twitter at FFRZ Redemption. He's also a contributor for rotoheat.com. In addition to that, created an incredible league called Polly's Playoffs, and you can find him over on Twitter at FFShaneB. It's time to welcome Shane Barrett to the show. How are you doing tonight, man?
Man, after that intro, can I get that intro clipped? Like, that's the best one I've ever had. That was awesome.
Well, I appreciate it. We'll clip it. We'll clip it. Get it your way.
Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah, man, I'm great. I got to play a little basketball and then just recorded another show and then was hopping on with you guys. So I'm ready to rock and roll.
Shane, you and Norton are crazy. Like I get so scared to go out on the basketball court. All these injuries and stuff. I'm not risking it. My brother, he's older than all of us. He's 10 years older than me. He's about 41. Tore his ACL playing. I'm out on basketball. It's too scary.
I was gonna say the good news for me is like I'm just a shooter and I'm so out of shape that I can't cut as much as I used to. So basically, it's just trying to figure out ways to get open for threes. So.
That's fun. That's funny. I'm getting to that point. I'm still like, I'm kind of a point guard, so I ball handle a little bit and things like that and run the offense, but like not like I used to. And when I was a little bit 5, 6, 7 years ago, and I did tear my ACL too. So it's now that I don't move as much though. Now I'm not jumping as much. It's I feel a little bit safer. Not fully safe, but any of these days, you never know. Yeah. But we don't want to put that bad juju on us. So we're gonna stick with the Commanders here. We're gonna talk some departures. Carson Wentz, Taylor Heineke, both gone from the QB room. J.D. McKissick, Trey Turner. The additions they brought in Jacoby Brissett, Chris Rodriguez, Andrew Wiley, and then new offensive coordinator Eric Bieniemy. So starting out, what are your expectations for the Commanders this season as a team?
Oh, this is I think the question I may have struggled with the most. I think they have the potential to come in second in the division because I think the Eagles are going to run away with this division. The thing is for me, like with this division specifically, like any one of the three of the Cowboys, the Giants, or the Commanders could end up as number 2, and it wouldn't surprise me. I honestly think the Cowboys end up as the 4th team. There was a graphic, I think, on Good Morning Football or ESPN the other day where it's like these 12-win teams, like which ones do you expect to not make the playoffs? And I was like, oh, crap, it's the Cowboys. Just because I think the direction that both the Giants and the Commanders are going, like it feels like it's trending upwards more than the Cowboys almost feel like they're trending downwards with the departures that they've had and the moves they've made and just their head coach in general. But like bringing in Eric Bieniemy, I think is going to be huge for this offense. And I know we're going to get to a lot of that in a minute, but I really do think they've got the potential to finish second in the division, probably win anywhere between 10 and 12 games, but it also wouldn't shock me if this division ends up eating itself a little bit and they end up with 8 or 9.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, it definitely makes sense. Obviously, Bieniemy is brings some excitement, and then also, going over to the QB room, Sam Howell, named the starter. You think he has some sneaky fantasy appeal?
Oh, 100%.
We heard it in the pre-show.
Loaded question.
We were talking pre-show. I absolutely do. I've got my home league auction draft, and Jay Felicio texted me. He was like, "We're going to be fighting over Sam Howell in this draft, aren't we?" I was like, 100%. Yeah, I really do. Like I mentioned pre-show, it's pinned as one of my highlights or whatever on Twitter, but I did a thread about Sam Howell about a month ago. And I think he is poised for a really big breakout second year. The weapons that he's got in Terry McLaurin and Jahan Dotson, who I'm super high on. And then you've got Brian Robinson, Antonio Gibson as well, plus Bieniemy. Like, I really do think he's poised for a second year breakout. He was my QB1 in the draft class. And it didn't make a lot of sense to me why he fell in the draft the way he did, just with what he had put up in college previously. So I really like Howell. I think he has tremendous upside for fantasy, especially with where you can get him.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. That makes sense for sure. Now, when we're talking about how, is it more of, are you thinking more like best ball super flex, or are you pretty in on him maybe having some streamer appeal or some a chance to be like a one QB kind of league guy as well.
Stream appeal, yes. One QB, no. But that's just because the way that I drafted one QB. After really the last couple of years, I want to have someone who I know is going to be a top 12 quarterback. I don't know if I'm ready to declare that on Sam Howell yet.
Spicy.
But for one QB, he'd probably be my QB. I'd be comfortable with him being my QB2 and filling in on bye weeks, or if my QB1 went down, I'd be comfortable with that.
Yeah, no, that definitely makes sense. I've also been pretty in on Howell as well, and he's been so cheap. So like it's awesome getting him super cheap. But
I'm over here trying to multitask because I pulled up this Sam Howell thread to get it out. Even though this is going to be aired, I don't know, maybe a week or two from now. I'm not quite sure the date exactly when this will come out, but I wanted to get this thread out, and I haven't sent it yet, but it's typed up. So you're excited for Howell?
Yes.
So the receiving options, Terry McLaurin had a little toe injury, I think, tonight. Hopefully he's good, because I just had my home league auction, and he is luckily our wide receiver 3 on that team, but we were excited to have him as our wide receiver 3. So hoping he gets back there. He entered the league 4 years ago. He's racked 3 straight years of at least 120 targets, 77 receptions, and 1,000 yards. Is this stuff finally the year that McLaurin can make that leap to the next level that we've hoped for years now? Or is it kind of, well, Sam Howell is going to be good for fantasy, but not necessarily amazing for Terry McLaurin?
If my sleeper is not deceiving me, he finished it. His highest finish so far has been wide receiver 14 last year, where he had 120 targets, 77 receptions, almost 1,200 yards, and 5 touchdowns.
Isn't that also like really wild? I think I just realized this last night because I was trying to hype myself up on him being our wide receiver 3. But his last year was his best year ever, and everybody seems the most out
the lowest on him, right?
Yeah.
Weird.
And it's not like Carson Wentz is that like huge step after what we see Jacoby Brissett did with Amari Cooper, or potentially what Sam Howell could be.
That's man. Oh, you almost opened up a can of worms right there. I'm gonna leave it. I'm gonna leave it closed for right now. But we may talk about it later. Yeah. I mean, I'm not a Carson Wentz guy either, like at all. So the step from Wentz to Howell, especially from a potential standpoint, do I think he finishes as top 12 receiver? I really don't know. And I know that's such a cop-out answer, but like for my dynasty rankings, I've got him at probably lower than he should be.
Well, it's tough because it's deceiving. He's been in the league for 4 years, but
he's 27. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I've got him at wide receiver 26 right now. That's actually right ahead of Calvin Ridley, which is
also an older wide receiver that's only played a few years.
Yeah. But then I think the real answer to your question is for fantasy, I love Jahan Dotson, and I've got him at wide receiver 29 in my dynasty rankings. So will Terry – I don't know if Terry cracks higher than wide receiver 14. Is it possible? Totally. I think the thing that he's going to have to do, just looking at the sleeper numbers – he's had 120 targets, 130 targets, 134 targets. He's never had more than 87 catches. He's got to fix that, I think, to make that next jump. Because like the touchdowns, he's had 4 or 5 roughly. That's enough to get you there. Now with the way that the league's going, I don't know if it is, but he's had 4 or 5 every year. He's like you guys said, he's hit around 1,000 yards he's had over 1,000 yards every year, but his rookie year. So the talent is there. The volume is there. I think he's just got to get more efficient to actually make that jump into the top 12.
Yeah, I could see what you're saying, especially like add 20 targets to him, and then that's really top 12 numbers. Yeah. So you talked about where you had him ranked in Dynasty, but when we're talking about dress, are you okay taking him in the 4th round, or does he have to slip to the 5th for you to take him? Which is crazy again, because like 4th round, it sounds early, but that's still like wide receiver. Correct me if I'm wrong, fellas. Wide receiver 23, 24 at that point.
Yeah. So So here's my question: are we talking 1 QB or Superflex? Because
it would be 1 QB in
one
that specific situation.
Okay. Let me pull up a different league then real quick, because with Superflex, he went in like my Polly's playoff draft. He went
Probably like 6th, 5th.
He went 5-12. So
yep. That makes sense.
It makes sense. It usually pushes like 1 behind, right? Because
one,
maybe
1.5.
So I'm
rounds.
pulling up another redraft that I did that was actually 1 QB because I want to see about where he went. He went at this answers your question perfectly. I took him at the 410.
So okay.
He's in on the 4th round.
I took him at the 410 as my wide receiver 1.
Woo! That was a no wide receiver draft going on there.
Yeah. Honestly, that's usually how I draft anyway. So, yeah,
Is it RB QB?
Nope, it was tight end QB RB.
Okay.
So I went Kelsey, Mahomes, Najee, and then McLaurin at the 410.
So I wonder do you have that draft open? Because I have a follow-up question for that.
Yeah.
Say you had the 4-2. I don't know if it will let you as a guest. If you had the 4-2.
If I had the 4-2.
Yeah, or a wide receiver that goes right around that early part of the 4th, would you have taken that wide receiver or T-Mac? Which I bet it's like Chris. No, it's probably better than Christian or lower than Christian, I think. Maybe it is like Christian Watson.
So the 4-2 in that draft.
Any wide receiver near that spot
was Keenan Allen and then Amari Cooper.
Do you take both of those guys over T-Mac?
I don't.
T-Mac over both?
Uh-huh.
So he definitely, I was saying, definitely in on him.
Definitely in on him in the 4th.
I'm going to take that back just one. I would take him over Amari. I would not take him over Keenan, I don't think.
Okay.
It's fair. That makes sense.
Yeah, Keenan this actually, I'm going to tie this all in together. So you mentioned Jacoby Brissett having Amari Cooper essentially as a wide receiver 1 numbers, correct? So I swear this isn't just because I hate Deshaun Watson as a person, but if you go look at the splits once Deshaun Watson took over as the starter, both Nick Chubb and Amari Cooper dropped from that RB1 wide receiver 1 territory outside of it. So my point being is I don't know how much I trust Deshaun Watson. So I would definitely take McLaurin over Amari in that case.
Well, it is completely fair. It's actually as much as I want to, for the Browns' sake, hope that it was him not playing ball for 2 years. I have him, both Deshaun and Amari, ranked pretty low. So I'm with you on that thought compared to the rest of the Dad Bod group. I think Norton's kind of in the middle, and then some are a little bit higher. We're all a little bit. It's always hard, obviously, as you know, you're a Jags fan at heart. It's always hard to kind of make sure your biases don't seep into like, I just want you to be good.
I totally didn't do that in Paul's playoff though.
So the other wide receiver on this team, Jahan Dotson, flashed as a rookie last year. Got I think it was 7 touchdowns.
Yeah, 7 touchdowns in 12 games.
First of all, where does he land in your wide receiver rankings this year? Not your dynasty again, because I think you told us wide receiver 29 in dynasty.
He's 29 in dynasty. Yeah.
His ADP is currently wide receiver 39. Are you higher than that?
So, looking at the Polly's playoff draft, so that's Superflex. He went 8-3.
Which means he's probably going right around 6th, 7th.
He went after Jordan Addison. He went ahead of George Pickens. I then 3 picks later took Deontay Johnson because I was hoping Dotson would fall later. And Jay
excited for Deontay pick.
Deontay got me. Yeah, as I say, you got me all hot and bothered with the Deontay after all those guys.
Yeah. So yeah, Jahan Dotson went at the 6-11 in that 1 QB draft I was referencing earlier. If I had not, just the way that I like to build my teams, is I typically go running back somewhat running back heavy, and this one kind of ended up being a hero running back with Najee at the 3-3, Pierce at the 5-3, and then Rashad White at the 6-10 for me. Dotson went one pick after me at the 6-11, and I was probably really pissed off about it. So, yeah, I mean, it's looking like I'm going to have to start taking Jahan Dotson in redraft drafts a lot earlier than I'm used to, but that's because he was such a value. But I'm still bought in. Like, I absolutely love the kid. I've told this story on multiple podcasts. I'm an Auburn fan for college football, and Auburn played Penn State when Dotson was there. And that year, Auburn's secondary was like the only saving grace that we had. Like, it was really good. I think Noah might not have been there, but our secondary was really good. Point being, Jahan Dotson made Sean Clifford look like Peyton Manning, and it was so frustrating because I was like, this kid is the only thing that Clifford has to throw to right now, and we cannot stop him.
Yeah.
So I've been on Dotson pretty much ever since then. I've rambled, I feel like, for the answer to this question, but yes, I'm in on Jahan Dotson. Like 6'11", I'll take him. If he gets up into the 5th, I'll stomach it and take him.
If you want to be more in on him as a player and a person, if you haven't seen it, Hey Rookie, which you could catch on YouTube.
Okay.
The season of his draft class would be 2021. He was on there. It's actually a great season in general, but he just that is where I actually I love these sort of shows because you get to know the person. You see okay, this dude looks like he is ready to go out there and play. His mom, I think, throughout college and maybe still currently, don't hold me to that, has had cancer or has been battling cancer. Okay. Just a all around great dude. It was awesome seeing him get drafted in that show. It was awesome seeing him talk, everything. I'm rooting for him as a player too. So yeah, I'm with you.
Well, and to I guess to the value point that you were asking about, like last year, he finished with 61 targets and 35 catches, 523 yards and 7 touchdowns. And I can't remember. Oh, it was Kyle Senra on the Paulie's Playoff Podathon mentioned for every, I think, 180 yards that a player racks up, they usually score 1 touchdown. So obviously Dotson was way over that line from an efficiency standpoint. What I see happening is him probably finishing around that 7 to 10 touchdown range, but his yards and targets going way up. And that's where I think the value, especially in PPR, is for him. Because he was battling injuries last year. And obviously
hamstring issues or something.
And obviously it sounds like from a personal standpoint, going through some stuff too, at least with his mom, and that I feel like will probably motivate him more to do even better than he did last year. So yeah, I love Jahan Dotson. I'm super in on him.
No, yeah, definitely makes sense. I think he's a lot of people are really like him, and like we mentioned, kind of rooting for him and things like that. So when we're gonna move over to the backfield here, it kind of looks like a committee once again. It's kind of a 2-headed instead of 3, from what it seems at least. Who knows though? But first of all, when it comes to committees like this, is it kind of something you like to take advantage of, or do you look to avoid more often than not in drafts?
So I'm giving you a cop-out answer, and I apologize, but
it's all good.
I'll hopefully wrap it into a nice, pretty bow. It depends on the backfield. So this one is actually one that I am trying to get a hold of because one, the Antonio Gibson hype has finally calmed the hell down, and I apologize if this is a family show. You can bleep that out later. So where I'm comfortable taking him at or around ADP. And then Brian Robinson is a guy I've been taking as well, because if Gibson gets hurt or doesn't live up to expectations, I think Brian Robinson's more than capable of being a 3-down back, and you're getting him late enough that is a steal.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. I think I'm kind of with you too, because before last year I was definitely avoiding, but that was when they had JD McKissick and kind of it was 3-headed, and McKissick was, the guy that could steal the pass work. And then it was so it wasn't like consolidated into 2 guys as much, which is fine. Three is where we kind of don't love it so much, but yeah, so I'm with you, especially with the ADPs. Now, between the two, Gibson and Robinson, they're kind of going somewhat close, but like the last ADP I was looking at was Underdog, and it was RB32, 99.6 overall for Gibson, and RB36, 106.5 for Robinson. Out of those two, which one do you kind of prefer? I know it's close, and which one, or maybe which one you notice yourself drafting more often?
I'm always going to go for the better value. And ironically enough, it's just the player that I like more out of the two. Never really been a Gibson guy, like I mentioned earlier. So give me Brian Robinson. They're about, like, at least in the drafts that I've done so far, they're about a round and a half off each other so far. So, like, Gibson in that one QB1 went at 8.8. Robinson went at 10.3.
Yeah. No, yeah, as I say, it's usually
that's a pretty big split, though. I feel like it's a little more narrow than that now.
Yeah. Well, that one finished a couple weeks ago, at least. So
it kind of,
not that it's a huge difference, but I think it's closer to like maybe a round difference, maybe.
Yeah, it kind of depends. I feel like on when you get, because
at that point, right? It's average. ADP is all average. Yeah.
Right. Because I've seen them go as far as, I've seen them in drafts go back to back even, and I've seen them go 2 rounds apart at points. So like, again, it's tough. But what about Chris Rodriguez? Is that someone you're even targeting as a late bench stash at all, or is he kind of pretty much off the radar for you?
And redraft.
In redraft, not really. Sorry, my camera got really blurry. In redraft, no, not really. I haven't seen I haven't done it yet, but like Dynasty, I was definitely taking that dart throw.
Yeah. Dynasty, you usually can sneak him onto your roster.
Yeah. Because I really liked him at Kentucky. I feel like he was kind of one of the under talked about prospects in this draft. I just don't know if I'm ready to commit to him from a redraft perspective.
I think I tend to agree with that. I mean, it's really, if you go with Brian Robinson, Antonio Gibson, if you can snag them both, it's kind of like that handcuff plus sort of situation. Hyper handcuff. Yeah. And like Brian Robinson, we got to remember, was coming off a pretty severe injury last season, pretty unheard of sort of thing. So, I mean, it's not like he played bad, but there's more potential. Maybe he was dealing with some pain. So Commanders aside, we have asked everybody on these episodes to what are your flag plant or your my guy players for the year?
Hell, ironically enough, 2 of them are Sam Howell and Jahan Dotson. But I will give you, I guess, 3 more.
Okay.
First one's Najee Harris. I'm all in on Najee.
I think I'm a little bit all in on Najee this year too. A little
bit.
So I guess a little in.
He's gonna get the volume. Like, I'm not worried about all the Jaylen Warren hype. Like, I think it's blown out of proportion. It's preseason. It should be blown out of proportion. But they improved their offensive line. Pickett should get better. I don't believe that he will. But
I think he will.
I think he might.
Well, I think he will because they improved their offensive line. So I think he'll have more time to actually have better decision making. And I don't even think like that. I'll get off that. But the other 2 are actually in the same backfield, and it's Travis Etienne and Tank Bigsby. And that was before I had committed to the Jags. Like, they're 2. Like, Bigsby was my favorite running back because obviously he played at Auburn. And then Etienne, I've loved Etienne. Like, I joke that the year that Etienne said he was going back to school was literally like the day that he had to make that decision was on my birthday. And I joke that it was my worst birthday present I've ever gotten. Because I was like geared up to get him in our rookie draft for my home league.
You sold your whole team
for him. To wait. And I was like, you gotta be kidding me. But I still ended up getting him on that team a year later, so it worked out. But yeah, those are probably 3 that aren't Commanders that I would consider my guys this year. Oh, and Michael Mayer. I'm a huge Michael Mayer fan.
Wow. So I'm not. This isn't even. It's the first time I think I've got that one on here.
Yeah, we know
People
that
are sleeping on him.
I completely agree.
Yeah.
If you guys don't follow Pope's FFH, Jeremy Populars, I don't even know
We
if
had
I
him.
pronounced that right.
Yep.
Yeah. He tweeted today that people were sleeping on Meyer because he's not this super athletic tight end, but from a receiving perspective, like he's still to me the best receiving tight end in the class.
He was supposed to be the number 1 tight end. He
Exactly.
and
I
he only got
don't
drafted
know-
8 spots after?
Yes, and I don't
yeah.
know why people have cooled on him so much. Yes, he didn't have a fantastic 40-yard dash or test extremely well athletically at the combine. It wasn't bad. It wasn't like, to reference one of his teammates, Kyron Williams, bad. Like, who I also love, but that's another story for another day. It's really just because I'm a Notre Dame fan. But Mayer, like, we've seen him be the number 1 target in offense in college in Notre Dame for 3 straight years and dominate. And people still couldn't guard him. Like, they knew that they wanted to get Mayer involved in the offense at Notre Dame, and he still put up numbers. And so I think that's going to translate really, really well to the NFL. He's going to a Josh McDaniels system that likes to use the tight end. And there's a clear opening for the number 2 role in that offense, I think, because it's obviously Devontae Adams, number 1. And then yes, they've got Jacoby Myers, they've got Hunter Renfrow, they've got Josh Jacobs, and they've got Michael Mayer. I think all 3 of them will vie for that number 2 spot. And there will probably be weeks where, like, 1 week it's Renfrow, 1 week it's Myers. I don't think that'll happen often. Maybe it's Jacobs if they actually decide to use him in the pass game. But Mayer, I think, it has an easy path to be in the number 2 in that offense and have 100 targets.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think the, like you mentioned, like the combine testing combined with landing spot in Vegas, everyone's out on the Raiders. They hate what's going on with the Raiders franchise in general. Like, I think that's kind of like cooled a bit of the hype. Whereas, like, obviously with the Kincaid stuff, he's going to play with Josh Allen, and everyone's just head over heels.
Oh, they're overhyping him.
Yeah,
it's a similar situation where the number 2 role is open, but I think there's more capable mouths to feed there.
Right. Yeah. No, I'm with you. So, but yeah. Anyway, Shane, we just wanted to say, again, that we can't thank you enough for joining us tonight. Talk some Commanders and some fantasy football with us.
Of course.
It's been an honor and a pleasure. Before we let you go, let the viewers know where they can find you and all your content, and then if you have anything coming soon that you'd like to promote.
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at FFShaneB. That is typically where I tweet most of my content out. Like Rob mentioned in the intro, I'm the host of Red Zone Redemption. You can find that account on Twitter at FFRZRedemption. I've been trying to share this more, but I'm trying to give people a safe space where if they want to talk about their faith, they can, and blend that into fantasy football as well. So that usually comes out weekly. I'm actually technically taking a little bit of a break, but that is to cut up all of the Polly's Playoff Podathon audio and put that out probably multiple episodes a day just to kind of fill that void, give my voice a little rest because talk for 15 hours that day.
That's a lot, man.
Dude, I can only imagine at the end of the 15 being like, oh, gosh.
I was so tired. I was just like, I'm ready to go to bed. Oh, but that I think is pretty much obviously rotoheat.com. Gonna have some stuff coming out on their YouTube channel here in a little bit. You can find my Superflex Dynasty PPR rankings there. Need to tweak those a little bit, but that's where you can find them. And then obviously Polly's Playoff Year 5. I'm going ahead and getting it out there. Registration will start kind of once the year turns over and we hit January. But you need to sign up because I got some fun stuff coming.
Absolutely. We definitely recommend it too. We're both in there. And so it's
Bobby's in there. Yeah.
Yep. Highly recommend.
And then ultimately, thank you guys for having me on. It was a blast.
Thank you for watching our episode. If you enjoyed this episode, please make sure you like and subscribe to our YouTube channel.
If you aren't already following us on Twitter, check us out at Dad Bod FS.
We'll be posting all of our best clips and videos to all of our social media: TikTok, Instagram, Twitch, Facebook, YouTube. You can find us on there at Dad Bod Fantasy Squad.
Lastly, if you'd rather just listen, we make sure we post our audio of each episode on all the major streaming platforms. Stick with us all season long so together we can count our trophies and not our calories.